Kia ora koutou. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shai. I'm the Deputy Leader of TOP. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm so excited to introduce you to our candidate for New Plymouth, Dan Thurston-Crow. Dan, how are you?
Po Marie hoa. I am good, thank you, Shai. It's been a good day in Taranaki. How are you?
Good. It's been a great day up here as well, minus the weather, but I got out and about and got to chat with some locals in my electorate today. So
Because you can.
Loved it. Yeah. At
Congratulations.
least somewhat more than we could under 2.5.
Yeah.
Slight improvement. So we'll take it for how it is. So, Dan, you are running in New Plymouth. Now, some people out there watching may not know this, but Dan is one of the OGs. Dan ran for TOP up here in Auckland, actually, right? In 2017, up against our Prime Minister.
The one and only Jacinda Ardern. Because why would you not take that on in your first political outing?
we'll have to ask Cam Lord, who is currently running against her this time. How he
Cam.
That as well. Poor Cam.
It's nice to hand it over the baton.
So Dan, I just want to throw it over to you. Tell everybody a little bit about your background and then what brought you to TOP.
Yeah, sure. It's the story I tell really is around when TOP started, or the first thing I became aware of about TOP. I was living in Beijing with my American husband, and we'd actually been fully engaged in the whole American election debacle. And then, so that was kind of 2016 going into 2017. And then we were coming up to the time of leaving Beijing, and we'd actually considered moving to America and becoming sort of part of a groundswell. But I would say we are the only people in the world, Thomas and I, who flew from Beijing to LA, went straight to the Women's March, like literally from the airport to the Women's March.
Wow.
I stayed that night in LA, flew back to Beijing on the Sunday.
No way.
Seriously.
What?
And the things that you do.
That's amazing.
It's just something that you do in a weekend.
As you do.
As you do. So anyway, our conversation at that time was, do we go to America? Do we, being gay, we were like, already could see the writing on the wall for how vulnerable groups were going to be treated under that particular kind of Republican administration. And Thomas and I are both very concerned about social issues, but we decided that we were better served actually coming back to Aotearoa, New Zealand. I have a son in Auckland who I hadn't seen. I lived in China for 4 years. Had a son who I hadn't seen, and it was kind of felt like an interesting time just to go back home and see what was going on there, because it was an election year as well. And so, our heads were full of leaving Beijing and going somewhere, and I started to see some interesting things come through my Facebook feed, and they were about some analysis on what was going on in Aotearoa. Primarily a lot to do with the environment, but also social issues and economic issues. And, it's one of those things. I didn't know TOP, but I was reading these sort of policy takes and this analysis. And I was like, am I allowed to swear here? Because I was like, holy shit, this is, this I can get behind. This is like, especially having seen what was going on in America. And then I'm like, okay, like, here's some hope. Here's this little spark of hope. So Thomas and I got back in kind of heading towards May of 2017. And so I wasn't particularly, didn't have a lot going on. I'm a business consultant, and I had some spare time on my hands. So I just called Jeff out of the blue and said, hey, look, been watching what you're posting, think it's awesome. Can I help out somehow? And I was thinking my background is strategy. And I was like, yeah, give me some kind of back office role and I'll help out. And he's like, do you want to run for parliament? And I'm like, no, of course not, you crazy man. Anyway, he encouraged me to meet Gareth. I met Gareth.
Jeff, the amount of no's he's had from all of us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was early on though, so yeah. And anyway, it became a yes. So I was like, okay, look, why not? Yeah, I'll take just a Dune on. How hard can this be? So yeah, but really the things that I've said this before. I'm not a politician. I call myself a businessman and an environmentalist. And we can talk more about those two things. But it really is. I keep seeing parties focusing on one area. It's like a stool for me, a three-legged stool. Um, and every party really seems to favor one of the legs of the stool and regard that the others can be sacrificed in some way. And then looking at the genius of genuinely kind of Gareth and Jeff's genius in putting this together in 2017, and all of the expert help that they got. And it's like, oh my God, someone who sees that our environment relies on a really strong social fabric, which relies on a strong economy, which relies on a healthy environment. And I'm like, bam, I'm totally all over this.
Yeah, that's so true, right? We just
Yeah.
are all about progress in all areas and not just picking one, let's call it a hobby horse, because one, yeah, well, I call it one rung, and yeah, well, one, yeah, I
Yeah.
like
Okay. Yeah.
technology as well, though. Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah.
can't
Look.
have one thing.
Yeah. It makes sense. The thing about it is that if you allow ideology, if you say this thing is good and this thing is bad, then I think the pathway, it's a mindset thing, right? So the pathway you go down is, let's make that thing not happen, and let's say that this is good. I love, right through the culture of top, I experience this attitude of not making people wrong and not making things wrong, but actually just looking at where systems are out of balance and they reward or discourage behaviors that we like to see, that are constructive or not. And I see judgmentalness and in all of the parties on towards the right. The judgment tends to be poor people make bad decisions or don't work hard enough, and towards the left it's wealthy people are greedy and avaricious and don't care about anyone. Neither of those things is true. And
Yeah, totally
the sort
agree.
of the consequence of that thinking is the tribalism that we have, which is, I have to vote Labour or I have to vote this party because my world is going to explode if I don't support them.
That's exactly right. It creates an enemy
Yeah.
completely unnecessarily. And then there's this feeling of you're either with us or you're against us. And when you have that mindset, there's no room for engagement, there's no room for dialogue. And you
Yeah.
double down on your line in the sand, and they double down on their line in the sand. And we just lose all communication. I mean, we've seen the extreme of this, right, in the US and even the UK with
Exactly.
Brexit. It's coming in a big way to New Zealand as well.
Yeah, I still have hope, and honestly, literally, that is why I'm campaigning this time around, is because I think the time has come that everyone, it's time to stand up for what you believe in, and I think that in terms of that, the lines in the sand or like ideology, it's like the enemy of truth, in the sense that once you label something, you get to be really simplistic about it, right? So like the poor equals not working hard enough, not being smart, and then all your narrative becomes in support of that very oversimplified thing. And then the truth is, you talk to anyone who works in economics or in social services or in conservation, and you discover this nuance and all of these really kind of interesting dynamics at play. And it's very, very hard in that context to find the bad guy. That like it's a system, and all these pieces are working together to prop up the systems in corrupt or or kind of constructive ways. So again, top is sorry.
Yeah, it's all about the systemic issues and focusing on where in the system we've gone wrong. Not picking a group to make them the enemy or the scapegoat or, the beat up, something to beat up. That's not constructive in any way and wouldn't get to the heart of the issues. So we'd just be wasting our time and energy.
Yeah. And so I was going to say, but a lot of people maybe don't know that Thomas and I spent a year on a conservation ship. And again, this is one of those things, you stand outside of it and you look at Greenpeace and Sea Shepherd, and our NGO was Earth Race. And you go, oh, these bad people out plundering the oceans and things like that. And then you go, and so we did some work in Mexico and Costa Rica. And quite quickly what you find is mostly it's poor people trying to feed their families with very little kind of economic opportunity doing these things. And all of a sudden you're like, God damn it, I wanted to bust some, some big kind of global demons. And I'm finding that it's these poor, people who are just like me and really doing what I would do if I was backed into a corner as well.
And just completely, it's an amazing experience. And maybe if you want to tell people a little more about that, because it is a really interesting story.
Yeah, it's so we met Pete Bethune. He gave a TED talk, and really it was interesting for us. Thomas and I are both we work actually really hard on being good kind of environmental citizens. We try and be kind of zero waste and eat kind of a planet friendly diet and things like that. And so Pete Bethune, he got up on the TED stage and really he just talked about his willingness to die for what he was doing. And so he picked up a 1994 tug in Washington, in a marina in Washington, and a Austrian company donated a $4 million camcopter drone to him to fly from the 1944, all steel tug, which meant it needed a massive overhaul. So we flew over to Washington, joined the ship, lived on it for a year. The first 6 months was just pulling everything, literally. It had kind of been converted into a love boat. So, and oh my God, there were mirrors everywhere, and there was all this really, really elaborate kind of moldings and honestly purple striped wallpaper. It was a disaster. So we totally gutted it. And then we we went to Mexico and kind of pulled it out of the water, painted the hull. And then we got in touch with we reached out to Mexico's largest conservation NGO, who brokered a contract with us to help the Mexican government or their Department of Conservation called CONAB, a project, a biodiversity project actually, out in Revillagigedo National Park, which is a Mexico's largest marine protected area. And again, awesome case studies about kind of fisheries management and keeping people connected to what the government is doing and why they're doing it. So we did that, and then we moved on to Costa Rica and worked, and in fact, the Earth Race now has a 1-year contract with their Department of Conservation on both marine protected areas, but also in some of their national parks. So they've got a park called Corcovado National Park, which has got 2.6% of the world's biodiversity on that terrestrial park.
Wow.
It's absolutely incredible.
Unreal.
So we were helping them with setting up camera traps for observation, but also looking for illegal gold mining. And again, activities that people are doing there, but that again, you just have this sick feeling realizing that you're the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff because the systems aren't changing that are driving people to destroy those habitats. And and again, I was talking to the chairman actually of Sustainable Taranaki today, who, for both of us, Aotearoa New Zealand our natural environment is such a taonga, and we have roughly 5 million people living in this space, which is, sort of similar landmass to Japan or the UK, which, with so many more people, we don't really it is not entirely good management that it is clean as it is. And there is some bad management going on that is allowing it, again, some structures and some kind of perverse incentives around how to utilize the land that is taking us in a really disastrous direction.
And when you're campaigning in Taranaki and you're going through, and I know this is an area that you're really passionate about, what kind of feedback are you getting from people in your region?
Yeah, look, it's really interesting, right? And it's very interesting for me to be campaigning here versus Mount Albert in 2017, because geographically, you look at Mount Albert, right? Like you can put a postage stamp over it, and then in my electorate here, it's from Waitara, up north past Waitara and down to Opunaki in the south. It's a massive area, so
huge area,
large, geographically large, very very much more diverse in terms of kind of lifestyle, working style, really strong Maori kind of iwi influence here, but also economically highest GDP in Aotearoa because of oil and gas. So oil and gas is the number one industry, and dairy is the number two industry. So these are really. It's really interesting because of what I said about that complexity thing. See, I get to talk about the environment in Mount Albert to people in a leafy inner city suburb who kind of work, lots of kind of professionals, and it's a much kind of narrower demographic there. And then here, there are so many people working in the oil and gas industry or working in services that rely on the whole kind of infrastructure set up around oil and gas. So what that means is they are much more nuanced in their understanding actually of our energy situation, of around emissions and use of fossil fuels, and I have to be really careful. I can't be sloppy in how I talk about ETS or what our policies are around emissions and polluting and things like that, because it's a really, they're knowledgeable here, and again it does. I'm really enjoying getting into the complexity of looking at how our climate change policy, and really debating our points with people who know shitloads more about the way, the energy mix that goes on here, and the way, the variations between, winter and summer, and the use of different sources. And they know everything. And these are smart people, right? They're engineers and scientists. And so I'm enjoying it because on the one hand, I'm getting schooled about what's really going on in a way that's like, for all human beings, it's really useful, right? To know the truth, to be honest about what's going on, and not just be able to trade out, fossil fuels are the devil, and once we cut off exploration, everything's going to be fine. It's far more complicated than that, and I've really appreciated being able to triangulate the conversations I'm having with the policy, with our policy, and look at, it's not regarded as perfect here, but by the same token, I've actually got quite a lot of support from people in the industry here, because of our pragmatism, because we're not ideological, because of our emphasis on talking to experts who know what they're about, because of our interest in getting government out of tinkering and pottering in the actual market dynamics of energy.
Absolutely right, and it's actually really good timing because we just released our updated climate policy today. So if anyone's watching and you didn't catch that, go and watch the live that Jess and Jeff did from earlier today, and we're doing a live tomorrow on that specifically as well.
I'm still traumatized. I'm still traumatized by the amputation of the pine tree, but anyway, I'll get over it.
It just reminded me. Go and watch the video. That's the second video of Jeff with the pine tree in his backyard. It reminded me of. I'm just going to digress because this is kind of a funny story. So, background today, Jeff took the pine tree home and cut it up in his backyard, and it reminded me of the time that my friend and I were living. People are going to hate the story, but at the time that my friend and I were living in this wee apartment in the city, and we had snuck in a Christmas tree that we weren't allowed, and so we had to saw it up in. I felt like we were disposing of a dead body. We had to saw it up in the apartment to dispose of it up.
Did you put it down the waste
honestly what I. No. We had it in like multiple small bags that we then took out to the car to get rid of. But it really reminded me of that, watching Jeff hack away at this tree.
Oh my God, yeah.
I'm sorry, I digress. But Dan, tell me more about your experience this time, and compared to how you found campaigning in New Plymouth generally, and sort of against the opponents that you've got compared to perhaps the opponents that you had in 2017.
Yeah, look, I mean, it really is. It's such a different election, and in almost every way that I can think about. Standing in Mount Albert, like I say, it's generally a more kind of left-wing and quite sort of reasonably monochromatic kind of crowd, and in terms of attitudes and ways of looking at the world, and I do one of the things I got really strongly last time around. One thing that's radically different is Jeff as a leader compared to Gareth. It is so. I think Gareth is a genius, and yet I had to defend his behavior an awful lot. And I don't know if Jeff is going to see this, but I do want to give a shout out to him and to you as the deputy leader. The way that you lead from the front and that you're in the trenches actually doing this with us, and that's the most reassuring thing I find about this is that sense of camaraderie and just the energy that everyone's putting into it. There's all these really trite things you can say, like we're not establishment politicians, but actually everyone's demonstrating that. We've all kind of got day jobs, and we're all putting it out on the line there, and in large part it's you and Jeff doing that as well. Just I think it gives an energy and a momentum and a confidence for the rest of us to keep doing it, because it's not easy. And I take my hat off. Again, I learned in 2017, every single candidate out there, I've never met a candidate who's doing it for glory. Certainly none of them are doing it for the money. Everyone is standing for what they think is a better Aotearoa than the one we have today. Now, I disagree violently with the picture that I see from some of them, but that doesn't detract from my respect that they are out there fighting their fight and talking their talk about what it is. But so here it has there are more small parties. So now up until now it's been seven candidates at debates, and it's going up to 8 now. With another small party has fielded a candidate here, and it makes it extremely difficult for anyone to cut through. I think it, in some ways, it reinforces that tribalism of who my team is, because it's like too much choice and too hard. We have limited attention, so how on earth do you kind of go through and make an assessment of anyone? So that that's an experience that I'm having. Some really heartwarming things that I've had are feedback that I've had from the debates are that outside of their candidate, which has been Labour or National, I've been the best person. So for the right wing, National and I were the best, and for the left wing, Labor and I were the best. So I'm taking something out of that. I'm quite liking
that. You get to steal from both. That's what I love about
yeah. Look, there's no stealing. I get to provide an interesting alternative for both. And that is, and I think the reality is the reason that's happening is we do have interesting things to talk about. It takes time to shake people out of the left-right paradigm. The first thing people want to know is which side are you on, and who would you go into coalition with? I don't know if you get that.
And I think it really confuses people. So because of being in level 2.5, and 3 and then 2.5 for so long, all of our events, and then obviously the election being delayed, have been postponed. And so most of I've only had one in my area. So most of mine are still to come. But I was invited to one in another electorate last week, which was an interesting experience. And I was very stoked to be included in that. But it is really interesting. And I think people get really confused because you say something that maybe the ACT guy will totally agree with and be like, what Top said actually, and then you will say something else, and then Greens will be like, oh yeah, no, we agree with that too. And so the people watching are probably like, wait, what? ACT and the Greens agree with Top? This is so confusing. Where do they sit? And so I have sort of felt that again. I've only had literally 2 so far, so it's days and feeling the crowd, but it's interesting.
Look, it is, and I think you can expect more of that. So and also door knocking is like it's a very similar thing, but another kind of about the theme of this election, the theme in 2017, the theme really was Jacinda Mania, and will it surpass national? Because I don't know if you remember, like Labour was down here, and then Jacinda, because
down 20 points in 6 weeks.
And I know because of the comment that was made that we also had to defend, and so the
I can't possibly think what comment you're referring to, Dan.
Me either. I've forgotten. But this time the theme is it Labour on its own, or does Labour, or will Labour need a partner? That's the theme, and so the conversations that I've been having really are around what. If you're pro-Labour, so what's been interesting for me, even people who are pro-Labour, I have said to them, what do you think about how comfortable do you feel about Labour going it alone this election? Do you think do you think it's the best thing for them to just be unfettered and be able to do what they want, or do you think there should be smaller parties in there holding them to account? And it might be how I framed the question, but universally the answer has been, oh no, I think people do appreciate MMP and don't really want to see us go back to a kind of a first past the post setting.
I think I'd love to agree with you, Dan. I would love to agree with you. I think that maybe in the last few months we've started to acknowledge the importance of MMP, but I still think the media have not caught up with the fact that we are an MMP 20 odd years later, and they still talk about National Labour, and the first 10 minutes of every news story every night is only about those 2 parties. And we have leaders' debates of just 2 parties, and that they talk about this major minor thing, and to me it's just big and small. I talk about them more in that way, and yes, it's heartening to hear that a lot of Labour supporters are saying, we want, Labour to partner with others. The cynic in me thinks, they need somebody to blame when their party, again, fails to deliver. That's the cynic in me. The Pollyanna in me is like, because they love MMP, and more parties mean more voices and more people are represented. So, we're totally on board with that.
I didn't know you were Pollyanna, and I just want to jump through my screen and into your room so we can have a little Pollyanna dance together.
I could probably literally still quote every line in that movie. I like to think that everybody really loves MMP and really wants to vote as if we have MMP, because it's not a perfect system by any means, but it is by far superior, at least, to first past the post.
Yeah.
Where we came from.
Oh God, yeah. Bring on single transferable vote, actually. But in the 100 years till that happens, what I have been saying is, I don't love the notion of voting strategically, but but there is, what I've been talking about is the difference between a wasted vote and an effective vote. So I'll if you will humor me, I'm just going to give you my 2-minute download. A wasted vote. So every 3 years, we all get the opportunity to send a message to government. And there is no context, there's no story, there's nothing qualitative about it. It is just, we deliver our message in the form of a tick. So on the receiving end of that, each party gets ticks. It doesn't hear, I'm voting for you because I really like those guys, but I'm worried they won't get in. So you're my second or third choice. They're not hearing that. They're hearing, yep, you're doing good. Keep doing what you're doing. So yeah. So the wasted vote is what I've been saying to people, because people here are really encouraging. They're really open to hearing. They ask good questions. They listen. They give me lots of encouragement. And there was a guy that said to me today, I was mentioning where we are in the polls and how bizarre I find it when I get so much anecdotal support. And he's like, oh, but don't underestimate your influence in the way that Top is changing the conversation. And I'm like, hey, buddy, I am out here every day doing this. And the only way I will know if I'm doing a good job is by getting a tick. Knowing that I'm changing the conversation, that's a down the track thing that that doesn't give me any sense of how I'm doing right now. So yeah, I was saying to him, if you like what I'm saying and you don't give me that tick, I don't know why I don't get the tick. I just know I don't get the tick. And no ticks means I'm not here next time. I do act. I'm not a politician. I will fight for Top for as long as people are telling me that they need me in the fight. But no ticks means, okay, well, I'm not your cup of tea, and that's all right. We can all be grown-ups.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? How often do we have people tell us every single day, either someone messages me or it's in real life, and they say to me, you know what, Shai, I have been following you. I'm loving the work that you're doing. I love Top's policies. Just not sure if I'm going to vote for you because, you might not get in. If every person who has said that to us voted for us, we would not have this problem at all. It's just about having that courage. If you genuinely support these policies and that is enough for you and you agree with what we are trying to achieve, draw your line in the sand and have the courage to stand behind that with your vote. The only way we together can bring about this change. And it might feel scary, but you can change the country.
Yeah. And I get that. I get the fear. And I also, I think people don't realize what it takes to be a candidate. And, and so I think maybe they take for granted that, we'll just, a fair fight's a good fight. And if we don't win this time, we'll just turn up next time. But that's not how human behavior works. You look to be making a difference, and if you don't get a sense that you're making a scrap of difference, why would you keep going? To me, that's a bit insane. Hey, Shai, what I am aware of is we've got 3 questions, and do you want to?
Yeah, I was just about to segue because what you've just said segues so beautifully into the first question here.
Right.
Smart one there, Dan. We'll keep you on. Okay, so the first question is from Craig.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan, why do you think so few candidates stood from 2017?
Okay, awesome question. I'm going to say there are maybe 3 things. One is there were a lot of really talented people who went on to went from Top onto other things. So Jenny Condy, for example, is now a councillor in Wellington. Leslie Immink is a councillor on the East Coast. There's a few people who went into local politics. And And the second reason is most of us weren't career politicians. So I think we were like, get in there, give it a nudge, but it's a sort of a once off thing. It's our, we can do our bit and then go back to our normal lives. So I'm a I'm a tiger for punishment, and I'm taking it on again. The third thing is TOP was a very different organization, a very different party, and there was how shall I say it? There was some disquiet or disharmony inside the organization last time around. The culture wasn't entirely healthy because there were two very strong schools of thought. So similarly to when Green has had a divergence between the social and the environmental, TOP had its own version of that, which led to quite a spectacular meltdown, sort of public meltdown. And it's a testament to TOP, actually, that every candidate who's come back is a testament to our belief in what TOP actually always stood for, and a faith that Jeff can actually deliver the TOP that we all really thought we were fighting for first time around. And I have to say, I love, like, we had awesome candidates last time around, but fuck, there's a good group of people in this, and our candidates. Again, all credit to you and Jeff for pulling together a really amazing bunch of human beings, and there's so much
awesome.
Yeah,
and so much energy.
Yeah, and good humor. It's a tough thing to be doing, and everyone keeps a sense of humor. There's lots of piss taking in it, but also a lot of support. There's reaching out and checking that everyone's okay. And in Mental Health Awareness Week, it's worth pointing out. Jeff himself has said, mental health is something that we all need to be aware of. You've said it. I think we are actually paying attention to each other and just watching that we're not letting any of the kind of the stress and pressure and busyness get to us.
That's right. And just being so aware when somebody needs to take some time to themselves to recoup, regenerate, and just something, while we're talking about campaigning. And I genuinely, if someone told me, I blocked it out from my memory because I had no idea, and I'm happy to talk about this very openly, I had no idea at all how difficult campaigning is. Because as somebody who had never been involved in politics before, all you see, every 3 years is politicians on TV, like we saw tonight, and Winston, he's gone to a factory, and Jacinda and Judith are at schools, and it just looks kind of easy. You just go and say hi to people, and surely that's it. And I mean, fair enough, they will the main parties will be experiencing a completely different campaign than us and some of the other very minor parties who don't have any money, and everything is your volunteers, and we don't have any, it's no staff, it's just people who are giving their time because of their deep set belief in what we're doing. But I just had no idea how much work and how exhausting it would be. So the fact that, Dan, you mentioned our team, and the fact that we have so many people in our team who give their everything to this is astounding.
And that's why, like, again, I don't want to demonize anyone. I don't blame anyone for having that fear about the wasted vote. But there is something quite devastating for as some, when you are putting that much effort in to be, for it to be such a casual thing. I love what you're doing, but I'm not going to vote for you because I don't think you're going to get in. It's honestly a bit hard to hear.
It really is. And I would rather somebody say to me, hate your policies, hate what you're about, not going to vote for you. I'd be like, that's cool, like totally fair enough, you do you, that's cool. But when people tell you, like, I'm the same as you, Dan, when someone says to me, I love it, love everything that you're doing, just not sure though, I'm like, what more? Because I think at that point, like in me, I'm always thinking, okay, what can I do more? What could I do differently? Would I, would I explain it this way to convince them? But it's like, you've already convinced them that the service or the product is good. It's just if they want to buy it. I don't know. Oh no,
it's
an interesting one.
Yeah. Again, it just shows the imperfection of our system that we have now. Like, for example, you imagine if we had single transferable vote, how different that would look at the top. Yeah, it's because
potentially top would have got in 2017.
Oh yeah,
and that's just where we're at.
Yeah.
Could talk about that all
night.
Thank
you for being in the trenches with me.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to be here. Okay, so we've got a question from Morpheus. What is your stance on freedom of speech?
Who goes first here?
Well, look, it's fair to say we don't have a policy in this particular space. And so, I mean, I was a prosecutor and I never dealt with cases on this specific topic, I think it's fair to say. But whenever there are crimes that do involve hate, that were motivated by hate, that's taken into account already as part of the sentencing process. The motive of an offender is always a consideration in sentencing in the current framework.
Yeah.
So whether we were going to review the current legal framework around freedom of speech would require a huge independent assessment by the Law Commission, as far as I'm concerned, because unless they're telling us there are changes needed, then we shouldn't be changing something. That's my view.
Yeah, I think from a kind of a human, from the more human rather than kind of legalistic perspective, it is like it's a super problematic area, right? Because there is violence in speech, and if I think our laws are that you cannot incite speech, incite violence. Sorry, through speech. I'd be super interested from Morpheus where this question comes from and whether Morpheus has a sense that speech is in any way constrained, if it's not free. I personally feel like I am free to say whatever the fucking I like, I don't experience any control around my speech, and I don't know if I don't know if I'm privileged or if I'm missing something. Do you have a sense that
I mean, I think there's not, and do you know what's interesting around this? And it's sort of slightly to the side of this conversation, but we have laws around the Harmful Digital Communications Act would be, if anything, in this ballpark, right? Because that's the area where that law came out, I think 2015, and Amy Adams actually was the one that was pushing that in response to a lot of the online bullying that just was blowing up in a huge way at that time. And the government needed to, at the minimum, be seen to be doing something about that space. And I've seen it be used in ways where where it really was a blackmail charge, but they will add in a harmful digital communications charge as well, just to cover off the base and sort of as a backup, and depending on the way in which the communication was used. But it is a very underutilized piece of legislation for what it was intended, I will say that. But I only had one case myself in all my time there under that particular act. Admittedly, it only came out in 2015. But I just think it's interesting to note that, because that would be the only space where you would say your freedom of speech is in some way curtailed, really.
Right.
And it's not even that curtailed, because you still see online bullying all the time. And how often do you actually see police filing charges that you just next to never, unless there's some added level of criminality or some added level of threat involved in that communication, including violence or intimidation, unless it gets into that realm. So
I wonder if sorry, I was just going to say, if Morpheus is still with us, there some more context could be useful, because I do one I know New Conservative standing here in New Plymouth has got a billboard saying that they're standing for free speech, and yet my interpretation of what they're talking about is actually a fear of political correctness, not which actually doesn't. It's political correctness is another form of free speech as far as I'm concerned. It's part of a dialogue. So yeah, I'm curious.
It is an interesting conversation, right? And people feel very strongly one way or another, even when your rights aren't actually under threat in a particular way. I'm not saying they are, and I'm not saying they're not, but people can be very perhaps overreactive, and not in an unreasonable way, but in a hypersensitive sense of losing something that they're not actually losing. Because whenever you have freedom to something, other people still have freedom from. I should have freedom from your harassment. I should have freedom from your bigotry. I should have freedom from being harassed, whatever it is. So we live in a society. You have rights, I have rights, and hopefully neither of our rights impact on each other, but they are going to limit in some way each other's rights. And that's just a matter of living in a society.
Oh my, I am so going to use that, the freedom from, because that's the missing piece. Again, that's that nuance that you need to come across when you look at these things. So so you're not being one-dimensional. You actually flip it around and look and consider what's where it's coming from and what's on the other side of it. So thank you. That's totally awesome. Right, the effect of taxing housing. Can I tell a story?
Oh, please.
Okay, so I in my first marriage, I had a thriving business and a house in an affluent suburb with a mortgage. And I was making so much money that I needed to hire a very expensive accountant to tell me what to do. So he helped me in my domestic situation. We set up trusts and we paid off our mortgage on our house, and then we bought investment properties. And we geared ourselves negatively and we depreciated chattels. And I ended up with, my wife and I had 5 properties. And this is another time in my life. So I ended up getting divorced and I walked away from all of those properties. So went to China and came back with no property, priced completely out of the housing market. So the benefits of taxing housing, or the effect of taxing housing. So here's the thing, right? The reason I ended up with all of those properties is because, as my very expensive tax man told me, or accountant told me, it was because I would avoid paying tax that otherwise I would be paying either through my business or through my salary. When I came back and saw top policy and looked at the housing crisis, this is a picture of me. It was like, oh my God. I honestly was embarrassed. In fact, I would say back then it was shame. I was ashamed of the way that I took money out of something that was creating value, that we had sort of around 8 employees in our business, did lots of really amazing work, contributed to the local economy in all sorts of ways. And actually we had global clients. The New Zealand Wine brand was one of our clients. We were their international marketing agency. So through my business, I was creating all of this value and hiring and training staff. But a lot of people, trainees, would come through and then go and get better jobs somewhere else. And then I was like, the money I took out, what value did that create? Like first, and it's like, that's like terrible.
Dan, you shouldn't feel shame from that. The whole point of this is that the system was telling you how best to spend your money. And the system tells people right now it makes most money just to put your money into housing rather than into businesses. You were given that advice from accountants who know the system.
Oh yeah, but yeah, and it's simply what I'm ashamed of more. I'm past shame now. Like back then it was, because it was that that first time you see something that you've done and you go, oh my God, like it was wrong in 40 different ways. Now I'm much more relaxed about it. Now I realize the accountant had to give me that advice. I was paying him. It was his professional job to give me the best possible tax avoiding advice. It's simply that now I could never, I said I'm a businessman and an environmentalist. So all my work is around helping companies start up and go from like 0 to 1 to thrive or to pivot and innovate and grow bigger. So that's all of my work. What's the biggest barrier? Or like there are now a number of barriers that those businesses face. So one is access to capital. So try and go to a bank with a business plan and ask them to lend you some money. Versus go to them with a housing valuation and ask them to give you a mortgage.
Completely. That's the part of the story that people don't talk about a lot. That banks, have all their debt in housing, and they would rather keep putting all their debt in housing rather than in businesses.
Right.
So struggling to get access to capital.
I'm part of, but because I work in kind of in technology, there's a really big tech startup group on Facebook. Like it's got over 100,000. It's a New Zealand tech startup ecosystem, something or other. So I went in there in 2017, like because I was like, oh my God, I get it now, and this is terrible. This is terrible for our economy and for our future. So I go onto this Facebook page and I'm like, hey guys, what's your feeling about investing in property versus investing in your business? And I swear to God, every single one of them said, no, it's too risky to invest in your business. You like, because you need a house. So here's the way that you get ahead. Like you save up and you buy a house, and then when you've got enough equity, you get a loan, and then you can put that into your business. And I'm like, no, that is fucking terrible. This is like, we're supposed to be this. In fact, I know we are this nation of innovative problem solvers, smart people. We're really good at this, but the system sets us up to fail. No wonder so many businesses fail early on. So many of them that I deal with are undercapitalized. I'm like, let's put a budget together for you to do blah, blah, blah. And then they find out they don't have enough cash flow for it. And it's like, oh, okay, well, what now? What next? And part of that, so it's not just access to capital, it's also access to consumers, because when we spend as a nation more per person on a roof over our head, oh God, I've got
the group chat, everyone behind the scenes, it's the group chat going off. Candidates.
It is the group chat going off. But also, consumers. Consumers don't have the disposable income here. Oh God, I'm sorry about this. I don't know how to get rid of it. I thought I quit out of it, but right. Hopefully I have now. So anyway, it's also stopping money flowing through our economy. And my third thing, and I'm not an economist here, but how much of the COVID support went to people's mortgages that then got siphoned off to foreign-owned banks and just took that stimulus money straight back out of our economy. So the effect of taxing housing, like it is, firstly, it's just fair and just. For a start, it's currently a loophole. It's just fair and just to remove the loophole. But the other effect of it is actually to give New Zealand businesses a chance to grow and flourish and thrive over the long term and not be constantly hand to mouth.
That's the thing. And we can use it to hold house prices stable, keep them flat. And what that will do is just over time, that'll give time for our wages and salaries to catch up and close that affordability gap. It's not a quick fix. Overnight, we're not all of a sudden going to have our housing to affordability ratio go from 1 to 7 to 1 to 3. That is just not going to happen.
Yeah. Oh my
God,
what
it will do, though, is stop it from getting worse from its current level. And in time, we will close this gap.
Yeah.
We have to do it sustainably. It's too big to fail. We cannot allow our housing market to crash. Yeah. That's really important. But we do need to stop it getting worse. We just need to axe capital. And I think it's a really important thing. We don't want to tax it. We want to axe it. And Jeff always talks about it in that way, because capital gains tax is not TOP's policy.
Yeah.
That is just a tax above an already unaffordable level.
Yeah.
It would do nothing. It's the kind of a policy that would have been excellent 30 years ago before we went on this travelator in a one-way direction. It's too late. The horse is well and truly gone out the gate. You are not getting it back in. Instead, it's dealing with the tax differential in the system where businesses are taxed up here and property is taxed down here. And it's that difference that sends everybody and the demand into the thing that's not taxed, because that's human behavior.
Of course.
As you heard from Dan's story, that was the accountant's advice. That is human behavior. You go into the thing that's not taxed. Speculators, drives up demand, drives up price.
Yeah.
We can hold it stable. And as to your next question on that, Harris, if how it would help you out as somebody who pays rent, it stops the goalposts from constantly moving all the time. I'm a renter as well. It's hard enough to have enough, and it's hard enough to have enough money. I don't know where you're based and what part of the country, but it's hard enough, especially here in Auckland where I am. Rents are rising regularly to keep up with rents, and then to have enough cash after that to save some money to put aside for the deposit that you're maybe going to get to a house that keeps going up by 20% in 12 months, which is what we have just seen up here.
Yeah.
Anyway, that may be.
Yeah. I think it's also worth pointing out to Harris that that we're not, because this is something I get, because our policies are so seen as so unusual. To me, they are just so common sense. But it's, so we tend to talk about them one by one, and we get sort of known for either top as the UBI party or top as the property tax party. But it's always actually total tax and welfare reform. So I think it's important not to talk about the sort of equity tax or RFRM or whatever on its own, but actually in conjunction with the flat tax and UBI, and the way they work so symbiotically, perfectly, to actually place the burden of tax exactly where it should be.
Yeah, and that's on our wealthiest people.
Well, yeah, in a nice, straight, even, fair line.
In a more progressive system than we currently have.
Oh, yeah.
Fairer and more progressive. Josiah, is that your own comment, or has someone written that you're passing to us? Josiah has written to us that that we were also known as the anti-cat party.
That's right, yeah.
Even though they never had a cat policy. That's the funniest thing. It's like, oh, do you still have that cat policy? It's like, they never actually did. So no.
Usually people actually know when they bring it up to me. Usually they say it with a knowing snicker.
And I don't mind on the map. I don't even know how they even.
Look, I don't even mind it. I did in Auckland. I did get into a very long conversation with an old woman about how terrible it was what I was doing to her cat, and then it turned out her cat was dead. So, and it was a long conversation, and then at the end she was like, "Oh no, my cat's dead, so it doesn't matter now."
Please.
Yeah.
So good. Okay, Dan, I've just seen that we've got about our hour, so I hope that I haven't missed any questions. But I've just loved chatting with you this evening. Thank you so much for being here, Dan. And so everyone, if you don't already, please follow Dan on Facebook. And also invite anyone you know in the Taranaki region, if they're maybe not even necessarily in the New Plymouth electorate, but Dan is talking about issues that are important to that region. And so invite them to like his page as well. Okay, well, that is all from us. And tomorrow we are doing a live Q&A on our just released climate policy. So tune in to that tomorrow at 5:30. Here on Facebook. Otherwise, take care and tell your friends about TOP. See you soon.
Thanks so much, Shai. Ka kite anō.